This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Thousands march in Sudan's cities in another day of protest against the Prime Minister's deal with the military. Ethiopia's government announces it has taken more strategic towns away from the Tigrayan forces. And a court in Myanmar jailed Aung San Suu Kyi for inciting dissent and breaching COVID rules. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi. And for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. And tonight I'm alongside my colleague Uche, who has our business headlines. Uche.
Thank you, Richard. And here's a look at what's coming up on Africa Live Bits. South African environmentalists are against Royal Dutch Shell's planned oil exploration in the country. And MTN South Africa is set to make vaccines mandatory for employees in January. Of course, all that coming up within the program. For now, back to you, Richard.
Thank you so much, Uche. Once again, welcome to Africa Live. Great to have you along with us for this hour. We begin in Ethiopia, where the country's state media is reporting that government forces have retaken the strategic towns of Dessie and Kombolcha from the Tigray People's Liberation Forces. The government forces have been reporting critical gains in recent days and claim that the TPLF forces have been withdrawing from parts of the northern region of Afar and Amhara. Just last week, the government announced it had retaken the World Heritage Site of Lalibela. And let's go to our correspondent, Gurun Chala, who has more from Addis Ababa. Gurun, welcome to the program. Welcome to Africa Live. Thank you for joining us. Gurun, what more can you tell us about the latest reports from the front lines in the north? Gurun?
State media has confirmed and announced this win by the Ethiopian National Defense Force and the combined force of the militia and others, led by the way, the Prime Minister himself, who is on the front line for several days now, that the victory of reclaiming strategic locations such as you've said, Kombolcha and Dessie have been confirmed now. As you know, this is an important mission, according to the Prime Minister, because these two locations, especially Kombolcha, which is an industry town, and Dessie, also a strategic city, which, by the way, signaled that TPLF force could march into Addis Ababa after they captured Dessie, Richard. So now the Ethiopian army has recaptured these important locations. These are apart from the already existing victories announced by the government, including the historic city of Lalibela and others in the south, north, east and west part of the northern part of the country as well. So the announcement has been made. Several footage released from Kombolcha and Dessie towns also confirmed that people are so much excited to see the national force re-entering the cities. TPLF is also saying that these victories cannot be acknowledged, but the footages we have seen, the story that is coming out of the city, all confirm the recapture of Dessie and Kombolcha and Bati at the same time. This is also another strategic location, Richard. So we can confirm now that these locations are now in the hands of the Ethiopian National Defense Force.
All right, Groom, that leads me very nicely indeed to my next question. Speaking of the TPLF, in recent weeks there have been fears that the TPLF were planning to march on the capital, Addis Ababa. Are those fears and concerns still there? And what is the TPLF saying about the government's claims of recapturing major towns?
I was checking official social media accounts, including Twitter, of TPLF leadership. They were saying that they are now strongly attacking the Ethiopian National Defense Force, actually including Dessie and other towns. They are saying that they will prevail and continue fighting so that their people can be protected. This is according to Getachew Reda, the spokesperson of the TPLF force, and also the former regional government's president's advisor. Richard, you should understand that the march to Addis Ababa, the news itself, as I was saying earlier, began after Kombolcha fell in the hands of the TPLF force. Now that the recapture of Dessie has happened, you can just simply understand that that plan of marching to Addis Ababa is now far away from becoming reality, because forces are being pushed from different locations, including Dese, Kombolcha, Bati, and other towns. You know that the Afar regional state is now completely free of TPLF force, and the Amhara regional state is also free, Lalibela and the others. So they are left with small locations. These are according to military experts we spoke to. They're saying that TPLF's chance of marching to Addis Ababa has dwindled by far over the last few weeks and days, since especially the Prime Minister went to the war front. So although TPLF is denouncing it on their official page, military experts confirm to you that that is really not the reality, but the Ethiopian National Defense Force are actually pushing them away, far, far away from the capital Addis Ababa. Perhaps in the next coming few days we can hear that the entire Amhara regional states like the Afar will be free of the TPLF force.
All right, Guru Mchala, thank you for bringing all of that there to light. There you have it. Government forces say they have retaken Desi and Kombolcha towns. Now let's turn our attention now to Sudan, where thousands of protesters once again marched in the city of Khartoum and other cities to protest military rule. The protesters are opposed to the Sudanese army's decision to dissolve the Sovereign Council and the Council of Ministers. They are also opposed to the political agreement signed between reinstated Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok and the military leaders. Hamdok had earlier assured that the agreement signed will realize the freeing of political detainees and free development aid. Observers expect the demonstrations will continue until the demands of the protesters are achieved. All right. Our correspondent Naba Muad'Din is in Khartoum for us. Naba, welcome to Africa Live. Welcome to the program. What more can you tell us about today's protest, Naba?
Thanks, Richard. Today's protest was big. People from Omdurman, which is one of the biggest cities in Khartoum, came to Bahri, and it was thousands of people gathered in a point where that saw mass demonstrations on November 17, where 14 protesters were killed due to the doctors' committee. People gathered at that point. Another big protest was heading to the palace, and it was the military put barricades to block the access to the palace, and the security forces and military fired tear gas and sound bombs to stop the protesters from going further, targeting the palace and heading to the palace. Also, other protest was in a Sittin street, which is one of the biggest streets in eastern Khartoum. And by the end of the protest, gangs were attacking the peaceful protesters. It was reported by activists and by protest groups. Some gangs were attacking the protesters with knives, with stones, and were trying to make chaos. Protests are organized in different days in December, and all of the protest groups are assuring that they will keep rallying till they see the military step back from the decision from the deal with Abdallah Hamdok to be ousted, and they refuse the political deal.
All right, Naba, observers say demonstrations will continue until demands are met. That brings me to my next question. The protests that followed the deal between the Prime Minister's side and the military have been persistent. Do the protest groups feel they are making any progress in getting what they want? From your perspective, how do you see it?
Yes, protesters think it's a long road and it's a long way, but they think they will make at least a voice, and they will tell the world that they don't accept this political deal. They know that the pressure is big on the politicians, on Abdallah Hamdok, on the military itself. Like the military want to step back, but with the organized protest in the following days and in the following weeks, and I expect that it will last for a few months in 2022. They think that even if it doesn't make it doesn't make a change or political change, but at least people and the whole world will know that the Sudanese people, they don't want any partnership with the military, and they don't want anything imposed on them, especially after al-Bashir ouster, because the change and demands changed into and morphed into political change, not only the change in economic life or social life or security. So yes, the protesters, they feel that this time it will be different, because they put great hopes that even if now people are ignoring the aspirations of Sudanese people, even the politicians, even the international community, but they feel that one day with the pressures and with the continued organized protests and strike, and even it may change to a civil disobedience, it will make a change, and they will see the whole political scene change in the following weeks and months.
All right, Naba Muhuddin, thank you so much for that update and report. Now, in other news, the Democratic Republic of Congo has announced the reinforcement of measures aimed at slowing the spread of COVID-19. The measures include the compulsory wearing of masks, social distancing, and a strict curfew. They are aimed at limiting the importation of the Omicron variant that has been detected in 4 African countries so far. CGTN's Chris Ochamringa sent this report from Kinshasa.
The DRC has stepped up measures to control the spread of COVID-19. The country's COVID-19 National Task Force has announced the compulsory wearing of masks, hand washing, and limited public gatherings to 50 people. The announcement comes barely 2 weeks after scientists detected the Omicron variant in South Africa. The DRC Health Ministry has not detected the variant in the country, but some people are happy that the government plans to protect them.
I think the government's health measures are a good idea because they're intended to protect us from the disease. If we follow them, we will be preventing deaths in our country.
Those regulations are not bad because they will help protect us from COVID-19. The President must have good reasons for introducing them at this moment. We just have to respect them.
Some health workers say the government's reinforcement of health regulations should be accompanied by payment of wages for those in the sector.
It's a good move, but the government should also pay health workers their allowances to motivate them to work.
Congolese authorities have recorded more than 1,100 COVID-19 deaths since March 2020. They've also recorded a slight increase in case numbers in the capital city.
The health guidelines aimed at preventing the spread of COVID-19 in the DRC have proved difficult to enforce, especially in the capital Kinshasa, because many people have long neglected mask wearing and hand washing in public places.
Vaccine hesitancy and misinformation is still widespread, despite efforts by the government and international organizations to counter it. And that has ranked the DRC among the least vaccinated countries in the world. According to the World Health Organization, only 56,000 people have been fully vaccinated out of its population of 90 million. The government plans to deploy the police to enforce the latest health measures in a bid to curb the spread of the disease and stop the importation of the Omicron variant. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
China has today donated an additional 500,000 Sinopharm vaccines to Somalia. The Horn of Africa nation has applauded China's efforts to help combat COVID-19 in the country. And in April this year, China was the first country to donate over 200,000 doses of vaccines to Somalia. President Xi Jinping's government this year pledged to provide about 2 billion COVID-19 vaccines to needy countries. About 1.85 billion doses have so far been donated to over 120 countries and international organizations. The nation has donated more vaccines than any other country on the globe.
And we are very grateful for that. Sharing the doses or getting contribution of vaccines means it's protecting people. Unless we protect all people, no one is safe. We have to be safe all together. For the Chinese president, I'm very grateful of this huge donation to Africa. Africa is where most of the low-income countries live. And it means that if you don't take care of who cannot afford the vaccines, it means that the rest of the world is not safe at all.
I think the pandemic has certainly taken its toll on people worldwide. And the people in Africa has been affected seriously, particularly people in Somalia, because Somalia is the least developed country in the world, and its people have suffered from serious droughts, civil conflicts, and many other challenges. So in April this year, China donated and delivered more than 200,000 vaccines to Somalia, making China the very first country to donate and deliver vaccines to Somalia.
A court in Myanmar has sentenced ousted civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi to 2 years in jail for inciting dissent against the military and breaching COVID rules. Her sentence has been reduced to 2 years from 4 years after a partial pardon from the country's military chief. Now, this is according to Myanmar State TV. Military spokesman Zaw Min Tun said former President Win Myint has also been sentenced to 4 years in jail on the very same charges. The military has added some other indictments since Suu Kyi was detained in February. They include violating the Official Secrets Act, corruption, and electoral fraud. The 1991 Nobel laureate faces decades in prison if convicted on all counts. The United Nations Human Rights Chief condemned the conviction, describing it as politically motivated. Our reporter Zhao Jiai in Yangon has more on Monday's verdict.
The court in Naypyidaw handed down its first verdict against Aung San Suu Kyi on Monday, sentencing the deposed Myanmar leader to 4 years in prison for incitement against the military and violating COVID-19 restrictions. Wu Wenmin, the ousted president of Myanmar, was also sentenced to 4 years. Suu Kyi was detained by the military on February the 1st. More verdicts are on the way because she faces a dozen charges that include corruption and violations of the State Secrets Act and the Telecom Law. They carry combined maximum sentences of more than 100 years in prison. The trial in the capital Naypyidaw was closed to the media, and Suu Kyi's lawyers were barred from communicating with media and public. Suu Kyi has been reportedly under house arrest in a location near Naypyidaw. Military spokesman Zaw Min Tun said Suu Kyi and Wenmin will not be taken to prison yet. He said they will face other charges from the places where they are now. Gao Jiayi for CGTN in Yangon.
The Political Bureau of the Communist Party of China's Central Committee on Monday held a meeting to analyze and study the economic work of 2022. The committee also met to arrange party conduct and anti-corruption work and review regulations concerning the CPC's discipline inspection. The meeting was chaired by Xi Jinping, General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee. According to the meeting, the year 2021 has been a milestone for both the party and the nation. The committee cited China's calm and effective responses to global changes. This includes a pandemic, both unseen in a century, the accomplishment of the daunting task of reform and development, and the securing of a good start to the 14th five-year plan. Now, before Monday's meeting, she had chaired a meeting of the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee. While you're watching Africa Live, we'll see you on the other side of the break with more news stories. Do not go away. Here's what's ahead. We take you to the streets of Kabul more than 3 months after the Taliban takeover.
So this is it. I'm just about to be shot.
Tents here, bottles are being thrown as they do so.
There are about 3 critical bridges here in Marawi. That's one of them. We're going to cross that bridge.
As you can see behind me, police forces
who are replying with gas. Gas just came in.
Tear gas, so it's all begun now.
Divisions leading the charge into West Mosul have brought us here.
just got to be careful here with some gunshots.
This is where most of the fighting has been concentrated.
Is the front line now after 9 days of fighting?
We're about 2 to 3 kilometers from
within
the front
clear
line.
view of this front line position.
Welcome back to Africa Live. Thanks for staying with us. It is now more than 3.5 months since the Taliban took over Afghanistan. How has the Taliban rule affected Afghans? And what are their expectations and fears for the days ahead? Our correspondent Amaralai Abbasan reports from Kabul.
It's now more than 100 days that the Taliban is ruling all over Afghanistan. After the fear instilled in a significant proportion of the population on August 15, the desperate scenes at Kabul airport, and given past history, panic that went through many minds in Kabul. Finally, many ordinary Afghans are getting along with the Taliban. I talked with many, but most of them dare not to criticize, particularly in front of the camera.
I am going to the university right now without any fear or trouble. In the past, during Ashraf Ghani era, I was getting back late evening from the university. I was afraid of being killed or looted on the way.
Job opportunities are limited, which has affected the finances of people, but that will also be solved, God willing.
The Taliban has formed an interim cabinet led by a prime minister or Raisul Wazara. The tricolor flag of Afghanistan is changed to the white one of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. So what are the main achievements of the current government?
The biggest and brightest achievement is maintaining security in the country. There are no more killings. The youth are not being killed. There's no bombardment. There's no rockets or mortar shellings on people's homes. People have a sense of relief. Secondly, you now know there's no corruption. Embezzlement is over and there's no robbery and looting. Revenues are being collected transparently and the sovereignty of the country is secure.
But women's rights has been a crucial discussion after the Taliban returned to the power. Secondary schools were open only in 7 out of 34 provinces. Women are banned of getting to public services and many offices, and the right to protest is limited. Women and girls have much more concerns and demands.
The conditions that they have put against women, I think women will not support them in that case. I think that they have to bring positive changes in their policies. Their policies should be clear. They must explain their foreign and domestic policies to avoid the confusion of the people. People have no idea where Afghanistan is headed to.
Millions of Afghan children have been in severe need of assistance and health care. According to UNICEF, almost 14 million children in the country do not have enough food to eat. Many don't know where their next meal is coming from. In addition, UNICEF warns that over 1 million Afghan children are at risk of dying due to severe acute malnutrition unless they receive immediate treatment.
If serious and emergency assistance of Afghan children doesn't take place, particularly in the upcoming winter, we'll witness a humanitarian crisis among Afghan children.
It's late night here, but still life continues. And some businesses operating during the nights, the cafes, the restaurants, and some shops, like this one, of dry fruits. Let's see what are these people thinking about the situation.
I'm very pleased that the government of Islamic Emirates of Afghanistan got its victory and entered to Kabul victoriously. The oppressors, kidnappers and corrupts disappeared from Afghanistan.
I'm in a barber shop right now. It's late evening and there are still some Afghan youth. They're just here for the barber shop with the barber. So let's talk with them. Salam alaikum, khasta nabashin.
Salam, خوب هستین؟
What if you shave your beard? The system is changed and the Taliban are around. Will it be trouble for you?
Not at all. There will be no trouble. They have no problem with shaving beards. People continue with their normal life.
What about you? Do you shave people's beards?
Yeah, no problem. We shave beard.
Many things change, including these Taliban police here in capital Kabul.
If it's raining, snowing, cold or hot, in any condition, we serve our nation and will continue our job.
Looming humanitarian catastrophe, economic crisis, starvation, drought, and many more challenges remain in front of the current government formed by the Taliban just 3 months ago. Yet there are many more challenges, including lack of international recognition, and some Taliban leaders still remain in UN sanction list. Will the current government be able to finally overcome all these challenges? And another question is, will the international community be able to assist millions of Afghans inside the country without any direct involvement of the government formed by the Taliban? Zmargale Abbasin, CGTN, Kabul.
Well, the UN Security Council on Friday voted unanimously to allow international naval forces to continue using all necessary means to fight piracy off the coast of Somalia. But this extension will only be in place for the next 3 months because the Somali government says there has been no piracy incident for over 4 years and it's time to end the operation. Mohammed Kahi reports from Mogadishu.
The federal government of Somalia has urged the UN Security Council to end the mission of the International Naval Force operating off its coastline. Somalia's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ambassador Abukar Osman, told the chamber that the presence of international force in Somalia's water is no longer necessary since piracy has ended in the region.
We believe that the Security Council on piracy and armed robbery of the coast of Somalia have successfully achieved its intended objective. Today, there is no single piracy-related incident of the coast of Somalia for the 4th consecutive year, and with no single piracy-related hostage in Somalia, thanks to the federal government of Somalia's effort in collaboration with the international community.
Somalia ended its participation in the UN-mandated group in 2020, following arguments that the continued deployment of military forces on Somalia's waters was aiding illegal fishing and intimidating Somali fishermen. Admiral Farah Omar is a former Somali Navy commander who oversaw the restructuring of the Horn of African Nations Coast Guard. He says the international community should divert the resources to rebuilding and equipping the Somali Navy.
It is recommended that the huge financial resources spent by our partners on the Maritime Security Force should be diverted to training and equipping the Somali Coast Guards. The main goal of the international community is to help us take up our own security responsibility, which we appreciate.
During Friday's meeting in New York, the Somali government said it's ready to pursue a bilateral maritime cooperation framework, underlining that that was the only sustainable way to preserve the gains made so far. Mohammed Kahir, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Tanzanian-born novelist Abdul Razak Gurna has received his medal after he won the Nobel Prize for Literature, and Swedish ambassador to Britain, Michaela Kumlin-Granit, handed the medal over to Gurna at a ceremony in London on Monday. The 72-year-old Gurna is expected to attend the main award ceremony in Stockholm on December the 10th. Gurna is known for his prolific works on colonialism and the plight of refugees. He condemned the Brexit and the Windrush scandal, in which the British government threatened to deport immigrants from the Caribbean despite being there legally in the 1960s and 1970s. In his address after the win, Gurna urged Europe to see African refugees as people who come out of need and who have something to give. Gurna becomes the 5th African to win the Nobel Prize in Literature. He follows South African writer J.M. Coetzee, who scooped the award in 2003. Gurna's writing career spans 5 decades since he moved to Britain and 1968. Well, the news continues on Africa Live. Time now for our business segment with Uche. Over to you, Uche.
Thanks, Richard. And coming up on Africa Live Biz. South African environmentalists are against Royal Dutch Shell's planned oil exploration in the country. And MTN South Africa is set to make vaccines mandatory for its employees in January.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN. Well, let's start off in South Africa. About 1,000 environmental enthusiasts took to the beaches of Port Edward on Sunday to protest against the Royal Dutch Shell's plan to do seismic oil exploration in the Wild Coast. Now, the environmentalists are saying the activity is a threat to marine life in the vital whale breeding grounds along the eastern coastal belt of South Africa. On Friday, a South African court dismissed an application filed by the environmentalists, rejecting the application, deeming the so-called threat to marine life as unproven. Now, the locals in the area fear the seismic blasting during the operation will kill the fish, which they depend on for a living. The Royal Dutch, on the other hand, says the exploration has regulatory approval and will significantly boost the country's energy security.
We don't want it here because our families live off this ocean. They fish crayfish amongst other things here and sell it to get money so they can feed their families because there are no jobs.
I don't want them to operate here because if they do, we won't be able to fish here. All these sea creatures will die or we won't catch anything. They shouldn't work here. What are we going to eat? It should stop.
And still in South Africa, youth unemployment is at a staggering 66.5%. This is the official rate for youth aged between 15 and 24. Now, unofficially, the figure is estimated to be over 70%. Even with tertiary education, young people ready to enter the workforce are still battling to find jobs. And according to Statistics South Africa, a further 500,000 people in the country were discouraged and stopped looking for work in the last 3 months. Here's Richard Nta with the details.
The prospects are bleak for young people trying to find work in South Africa. Shanae Kader is 23 years old. She completed her second degree in 2020 and is still struggling to find a job.
I studied psychology at Wits University and I had finished my second degree last year. I actually have been looking for a job since before I finished my undergrad, which was about 2 years ago. So when I was in my final year of my undergrad degree, I started looking for jobs in case I don't get into honors. So I've been searching and it's hard because you need experience.
Despite several attempts and ambitious plans to create jobs, there's been little success. South Africa's unemployment rate is at a new record of 34.9%. Some experts believe education is not in line with the workplace, while some feel the poor state of the economy is to blame.
The kind of higher education degrees that South Africa produces do not necessarily meet the demand of the labor market or what the kind of jobs that are out there. In other words, graduates study, young people go to institutions of higher education to study, get their qualifications, but cannot find jobs.
According to the stats, 554,000 people stopped looking for employment in the third quarter of this year. This brings the total to 3.9 million people that are discouraged job seekers.
These days, when you need to look for maybe a junior role in anything that you've studied and anything you've done, they want 3 to 5 years experience. And how do you expect that from someone who's fresh out of school or just basically been studying for the past 3 to 5 years? And it's really hard because you start growing in this world, you need to be financially stable, you can't basically do anything. Whether you have a small job, it's not enough.
While unemployment is up 10% since 2011, the rate rose almost 5% alone since January 2020 when COVID started.
I came into this year being very hopeful, and it was such a letdown because with COVID, it's always ups and downs, push and pull. You don't know what to experience, you don't know what to expect. Look at now, we have a new variant, and it's just very difficult, especially from an unemployed graduate perspective, because when I was in undergrad, I had searched for jobs and there were steady things, applications open, and then in less than 2 months, it all closed. Instead of people looking for jobs, they were getting rid of people in their companies.
The efforts to create jobs in the last decade have shown little success. Some experts believe it's time for a complete overhaul in strategy. Sumitra Nadu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Meanwhile, MTN South Africa has announced that it plans to make the use of vaccines mandatory and is prepared to fire employees that do not comply. Now, Africa's largest wireless carrier says it will start implementing the policy from January, becoming the biggest company yet to state it will terminate employment contracts for non-compliance by workers. Now, Africa has the lowest number of vaccinated people, and that's partly due to access and vaccine hesitancy. In South Africa, only about 43% of the adult population is inoculated. The low rate of vaccinations has seen some companies, including Standard Bank Group and Discovery, also moving towards stricter policies. Now, besides trade, the United Arab Emirates is also an important overseas investment destination for China. For example, China Energy Engineering Group, or CEEC, is building one of the world's top 5 seawater desalination projects north of Dubai. When complete, the project will benefit about 2 million people living under tropical desert climates. Take a look.
It's 60 kilometers north of Dubai. One of the world's largest desalination plants is being constructed by China Energy Engineering Group, or CEEC. The Umukawang 150 MIGD desalination plant, when complete, will provide 680,000 tons of clean drinkable water every day to 2 million residents in the UAE.
This 650-meter long breakwater with a 500,000 ton rocks is constructed for protection of intake channel and keeping the intake basin water calm. The seawater then enters in an open intake channel system to be pumped into the plant through the 4 turbines installed at the intake pumping station. The seawater then will be screened in the pumping station before it goes to the pre-treatment process.
CEEC pays attention to protecting marine ecological lives while pre-treating the seawater. The company has a professional team to monitor seawater quality and marine environment on a daily basis. Pre-treated water will enter the first-level reverse osmosis unit. Another crucial green technology takes effect here.
To reduce energy consumption and increase the water recovery rate, we have the energy recovery device next to the reverse osmosis. Compared with other regular modes, this device can help cut energy consumption by 20%. It's a world-leading energy-saving technology.
After being disinfected, treated water will go to 5 huge drinking water tanks before entering user pipelines. Each of these tanks can hold 135,000 tons of water. This Wumakwang desalination project is an important part of UAE's 2036 water security strategy. The project is expected to go into operation next August.
And on the international front, many in the U.S. say that they're having trouble feeding their families. Higher food costs caused by inflation have added to the challenge this year. And as our Hendrik Sibrandina reports from Colorado, food banks are dealing with increased costs as well.
Outside a Denver Human Services office, staffers and volunteers with Food Bank of the Rockies set up a mobile pantry. A wide menu of food items is prepared to be distributed to people in need, some of whom are lined up in their cars already. It promises to be a busy morning here.
So we're going to need 2 people, one right there and one here for traffic.
These boxes are essential for many.
Not having enough money for the holidays to buy food, and actually a lot of things on the shelf that you really need is gone or it's too expensive. So helping this here helps me.
Higher inflation has driven up food costs significantly across the U.S.
The prices of groceries have completely skyrocketed. It's really insane.
Cost of living is high, gas is high.
Yes.
I don't know. It's a constant struggle. It's very frustrating.
That struggle is now shared by this food provider. 80% of what Food Bank of the Rockies hands out is donated by retailers, manufacturers, and agricultural partners. It pays for the rest.
The amount of money that we are spending on food has more than tripled in the last 2.5 years. We're now spending almost $1 million every single month.
For example, the cost of beef has gone up 27% over the past year. Vegetable oil is up 54%, and canned fruit another 30%. Freight costs for the organization are up 25%, and some temporary U.S. government food commodities are not available. Many food banks are also dealing with supply chain issues. This trend and the need for help escalated when the pandemic hit.
I've never used assistance, food assistance, government assistance in my life, and I'm very grateful that it's available. I didn't know it was available, and if it wasn't available, I don't know what I would be doing right now.
I'm a single dad raising 3 girls and 2 boys on my own.
For Ernest Watson and many he knows, it's a daily struggle to get by.
It's ridiculous, even the gas. I mean, California is $5 a gallon. Like, low-income people, how can we afford that? You know, we barely trying to make it on ends meet now. This helps out tremendously.
Food Bank of the Rockies, which says each dollar buys 4 meals, is counting on the public to remain in a giving mood. 40% of its annual revenue comes at year's end.
We're not sure if the inflation that we've seen with food costs are going to maintain, but we're bracing for that.
These folks and others like them are counting on this service for the holidays and beyond. Hendrik Sibrandina, CGTN, Denver.
Well, that's all for now on Africa Live Biz, but still to come on Global Business Africa, we'll be exploring how the South African government is dealing with the rising unemployment rate. Of course, all that coming up atop of the hour. For now, let's head into a short break. My colleague Richard will be back after this.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival, and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back to Africa Live. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate your company. Table Mountain was recently named the best tourist destination in Africa. But wildlife crime in the Table Mountain National Park in and around Cape Town remains a huge concern. Now, South African National Parks authorities have established a new team of Special Operation Rangers to fight crime in the park. Renee Del Carme has more.
Known as the SEAM Team, this group of Special Operations Rangers will be deployed at sea, in the air and on the mountain. After months of tough physical and mental training, they are ready for action. The Special Rangers will be responsible for visitor safety, search and rescue, as well as fighting environmental crime on the front line in the war against poaching.
Table Mountain National Park is incredibly unique in terms of its biodiversity location as well as its setting. We are in an urban area, and this gem, this absolute jewel, this World Heritage Site needs to be protected. We are working towards making this park a stronghold for enforcement, that if anyone tries to do anything in this park that is untoward or illegal, that they will be met with the full might of the law that we are able to apply.
People that love our park will treat them with gentle hands. But for the criminals, what we are launching today is just the beginning. We're using intelligence, we're using resources, we're using technology, working within the boundaries of the law with law enforcement agencies to protect our people, to protect environment.
The new recruits, including members of a highly trained canine unit, were honored in a passing out parade where they were praised for their dedication.
Today, we really want to salute you for a job well done. Together with the trainers and all the staff and team members in Table Mountain National Park, you made us all proud.
Sandpark says the SEAM Team will play an integral part in tightening security as poaching, which went down during the COVID-19 hard lockdown, is once again on the increase. Nta, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
And we are not done just yet. We've got your sports news coming up after the break. Here's a peek at the headlines. We take a look at how an amputee uses golf to deal with trauma and anxiety.
Every story starts